What is going on YouTube? This is the Middle School Math Man. This video is going to be on factoring trinomials when we have an a value. So as we know, the first thing that we should be looking to do is pulling out a GCF. But sometimes we can't pull a GCF out. Sometimes there's going to be a number in that a position, like you can see in all of these. They all have a number there, and there's still going to be a number there even if we pull out a GCF. So I'm going to teach a method called slide and divide. This is how we're going to factor when I have a number in front of the x or whatever variable squared, which is the a position. So if you remember, ax squared plus bx plus c. We learned how to factor when there wasn't an a value, when a was 1. We also did some things on perfect squares and so on and so forth, but this video is going to be on the slide and divide method. So if we look at number 1, there's no GCFs, there's nothing to pull out. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this 5, which is in the a position, and we're going to multiply it by the number that is in the c position. So that's the very first step. We're going to slide. That's the slide part of slide and divide. We're going to slide the 5, or the a, to the c position. So that's m squared minus 17m plus 30. That's what we get when we slide that 5 down to the 6. Now the next step is to just factor. So we need to think of two numbers that multiply to 30 and add to negative 17. So we're thinking to ourselves, two numbers that multiply to 30 and add to negative 17. So it's going to be minus 15 and minus 2, because negative 15 times negative 2 is 30, and then when you add those two together, it equals negative 17. So here's where the divide part comes in. At the start, we multiplied the 5 into our expression. Now we're going to divide it out. So what we're going to do is we're going to divide both of these numbers by 5, which is the number that we multiplied in at the start. So we need to try to reduce these fractions. So 15 over 5 actually reduces to a whole number, m minus 3. But if you look at the second binomial, you can't reduce 2 over 5. That's already in the simplest form. So what we're going to do when we have a fraction like this is we're going to take the number at the bottom, the denominator, and we're going to put it in front of the m. So in this case, it's going to be 5m minus 2. So that is going to be our final answer for those. Let's move on to number 4. So I'm going to take the number in my a position, multiply it by c. So this is a squared minus 4a plus 4. Now we're going to factor like normal. So two numbers that multiply to 4 and add to negative 4. So if we have minus 2, that's going to work. And I slid, or I multiplied in the 4 at the start, so now I'm going to divide out the 4. So what we need to do, we need to make sure we reduce. So 2 over 4 is 1 over 2. And then obviously I have some fractions, so I'm going to bring the denominator to the front. So that is 2a minus 1, and then 2a minus 1. So I talked about what to do here in the perfect squares trinomials video. 2a minus 1 times 2a minus 1 can be written more concisely, so that's 2a minus 1 squared. So that should be your final answer for number 4. Now for numbers 2 and 3, we need to work these. And obviously, as you can see, we're going to have a GCF. So for number 2, my GCF is 5. So that's my very first step, very first thing to look for. So as you can see, when we pulled out a GCF, we still have a number in that A position. So this 2 and 3 are fairly complex because we're pulling out a GCF and we need to slide and divide. So when I do that, I'm going to get 5 times k squared plus 15k plus 14, because remember we slide the A to the C. Now I'm going to factor this just like we've been doing with the first 2 problems. So 2 numbers I multiply to 14 and add to 15. So that's going to be k plus 14 and k plus 1. And then our last step I'll do in red here. We need to divide out the 2 because that's the number that we multiplied in from the start. So we're going to have 5 times k. 14 over 2 is 7. And then the second binomial, we can't reduce, so we're going to take the 2 and we're going to slide it in front of the k. So that should be our final answer. Number 3, if you want to pause the video and try this one on your own, that would be a good idea. So same thing, we're going to start with the GCF. So if we try 2, I know 2 is going to work, but also it looks like 4 will work. So I think the GCF here should be 4. So we have 4, we're going to pull that out, and then I have 5n squared minus 13n minus 6. And then as you know, we still have an a there, so we're going to slide it to c. So I'm going to have n squared minus 13n minus 30, and now I'm just going to factor that normally. So 2 numbers that multiply to negative 30 and add to negative 13. That's going to be minus 15 and plus 2. Last step, we're now going to do the divide part of slide and divide. We're going to divide out the 5. So our final answer is going to be 4 times n minus 3, because 15 divided by 5 is 3. And then I'm going to take the 5 and I'm going to slide it in front of the n. So there we go. That's going to be our final answer. So just a quick review. Whenever you take out the GCF and there's still a number in that A position, you're going to slide the number, slide the A to the C, multiply, and then you're going to factor it normally. And then the very last step is to divide out the number that you multiplied in. And then there's some reducing you need to do with the fractions. And if you have a fraction like we had here with the 2 over 5, the denominator slides in front of the n.